Welcome to Creative Caregiving and Beyond. More and more people are having to become caregivers for their elderly loved ones, and navigating this journey can be really difficult. This podcast will provide guidance and give practical tips for your family. Your host is Wendy Whiteman, elder law attorney, author, speaker, and leading insight advisor in senior protocol and senior lifestyle trends. Know that you are not alone in getting the help that you need. Let's get started. And here's Wendy.
Well, welcome to the show. Like many of you, I have caregiving responsibilities for my mother. And today we have some great information for you that is going to be helpful along with your journey. Today we have a special guest, Nikki Brown, who is with Civitas Senior Living. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes. Well, Nikki she's a licensed master social worker.
Correct.
And she received her bachelor's degree from West Texas A&M.
Yes, ma'am. Along with my master's degree.
Along with your master's at the same place.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So, Nikki, I found it really interesting, the name of your facility. And it says it was Latin for, I read on your website, Latin for community.
In our company, we are it's very important to us that it is a community.
Okay.
So all of our different communities throughout Texas and the other states that we're in, it is very much a community. It is where our residents live. It is their home. And it's important that it feel like a community.
And I saw on your site, it says we build more than a community. We build a home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is their home. All of our residents, it's their home.
Yeah.
And so everything we do is with that in mind.
Okay.
We want to make it an open environment. We want our families to feel welcome, our staff to feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything we do at Civitas, all of our programming is with that in mind.
Okay. Well, I am especially interested in the design process and the design you guys have carefully thought out for each facility. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we have many different types of communities.
Okay.
So we have independent living, we have assisted living, and we have memory care.
Okay.
Every property in our portfolio looks different. They all feel different. And so what you'll find is that we have a design company. Their name is Senior by Design.
Oh.
And they design all of our buildings and actually come in and install everything. So every building has its own unique feel, and it's designed for its area.
Okay.
So what you're going to find in Fort Worth is going to look different to what you find in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes.
Just because the people who live in that home or in that community, they are probably used to that environment from that area. So you're going to find out in Weatherford, you're going to find a very rustic feeling building.
Okay.
Where in Red Oak,
Yeah.
you have a different feel just because every location is designed for its area.
Well, that's well thought out for your residents, and that makes them feel more comfortable, I bet. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It sure is. Absolutely. And it's very important that it feels like a home.
Yeah. Well, I was reading that there are, different colors and different things that people gravitate towards, especially, if someone's in memory care or if they're in assisted living. And it just makes them feel more comfortable and not unnerved. And so the anxiousness kind of goes away. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of research out there that actually coordinates and affiliates colors with mood. And not to say that I'm an expert on that at all, but I do know that all of those things are taken into account when our design teams are, picking colors, and you're going to see a lot of soft colors.
Yes.
But yeah, that's absolutely, there is research to back that up.
Very good. Very good.
Ma'am.
Well, that's very innovative. And that's what this show is about, looking at different things and different trends that we can use and for best practices for our seniors in the senior community to make it better, to make it a better space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to be innovative in this line of work.
Yes.
In the last year has changed senior living forever.
Yes.
And, in this
That's true.
field, we have to forever be willing to make changes, see what works, see what doesn't work. And at Civitas, we are very, very keen on that. And from the top down, we all work to make sure that the communities are innovative and we're offering the most up-to-date amenities available for our seniors.
Very good. Very good.
Absolutely.
So your company's philosophy is very inclusive as far as getting feedback from your employees in that process?
Absolutely. We have an amazing people operations team.
Okay.
And they do different kinds of surveys, employee surveys, family surveys, resident surveys. And so we are always looking for the feedback to know kind of what we're doing great, maybe where there's areas of opportunity. And the good thing is we're always willing to make changes that are necessary.
Very good. Very good.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's just really interesting because we had another program where we had some college kids that have actually developed this new technology for senior care. And it was so funny. I was like, what do you guys were doing? And you were in a dorm room thinking about seniors, or, how does this come about? How does this even cross your mind? But that's great because we do need that input for the future. We need new ideas and new technology.
100%.
And yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we saw last year as the pandemic kind of creeped in was we had to find ways for our seniors to see their families.
True. That's so true.
If you had any buy-in in Zoom last year, I'm sure their stocks went nuts. But, that was a way that we had our seniors to communicate with their families when, in the height of the pandemic, when we couldn't have visitors. And so technology is super important as we move forward and how we can use that in our communities and whatnot.
Very good. So I bet everyone's learning. I mean, I was learning about Zoom too, and so I bet that was a good introduction too for your seniors as well to connect with technology a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I can say that they all loved it.
Yes.
It doesn't replace their loved ones being at the community, being able to touch them, but it was better than nothing. And
that's right.
Luckily now we've moved past that and we can allow visitors back in our buildings and in our communities. And that's really helped. It's made a huge difference. And so we're very excited that we've gotten over that. However, I'm not sure we would have made it through the last year without technology.
That's true. That's true. We all needed it. And so you have different living units or living environments. Could you tell our audience what those are?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So it starts with the least restrictive care is independent living.
Okay.
And what that means is that in independent living, everyone is living in their own apartment, or in some cases, what we would consider a cottage or a villa. Those apartments are going to be like single level, kind of in a duplex style setting.
Okay.
Within the campus of the other properties. And then there's independent living. It's like an apartment building. Okay. So the cool thing about independent living is it is got a dining room. We've got restaurant style dining. Residents that included in their base price, they can typically come down and eat at about 2 meals a day, depending on the community and the levels that are offered. But it is very much restaurant style, great dining experience. But also within that, we have a lot of social engagement opportunities.
Oh, very good.
So folks who are living in independent living often really want that social interaction.
Yes.
They want to be able to, go down and play pool with their friends or cards, those kinds of things. It is a supervised environment, meaning that we have staff on the property around the clock.
Okay.
Now, in independent living, our seniors typically don't need any type of care, meaning they live independently in their apartment. They can primarily do things for themselves.
They can kind of come and go as they please.
Ma'am. They can come and go as they please. They have full kitchens. A lot of them still cook. A lot of them still have their friends over. And yes, they can come and go as they please. It's more of, it is a secure environment and there is people there and there is the dining aspect of it. We do have housekeeping on site most places.
Oh, that's very good.
And residents can, choose to use that.
Yes.
And then you move down to assisted living. Okay. Assisted living, the folks who live in assisted living often need some form of care. Okay. So in assisted living, you have still have a private apartment. Okay. In that apartment, you're going to have more of a kitchenette style setting. So instead of a full kitchen, most of the folks who live in assisted living do rely on our dining program, which is restaurant style. Okay. So we're offering 3 meals a day that is included in their base price. Okay. Come down to the dining room and, multiple choices on the menu. Yes. dining is very important
It is
for our seniors.
Yes.
And we at Civitas have an amazing dining program, and our food and beverage directors are very highly trained, and our menus are amazing.
Very good.
So also in assisted living, of course, we now have care staff on site 24 hours a day.
Okay.
So most of our residents need some form of help with care.
Yes.
And so that's kind of the difference when you start talking about assisted living. And then there's the memory care setting.
Okay.
Memory care is a secured environment.
Okay.
So that means that the folks who live in a memory care setting typically have some type of cognitive deficits.
Mm-hmm.
And so they live in a memory care setting for safety, typically.
Right.
So that environment, it's still very much a home-like setting.
Okay.
You still have private apartments. It is still restaurant-style dining, except you have less choices.
Yes.
And instead of handing a resident a menu, which might be confusing or overwhelming, those meals are pre-selected by family, or our memory care coordinators get to know our residents very well and typically know kind of what their choices are going to be.
Okay.
And so that is still brought up, plated from the same restaurant style dining as our assisted living, but it is, we still sit at a table and it is still served,
right.
Restaurant style in courses. And so that's the 3 different levels of care that we at Civitas take care of. And not every property has all 3 levels.
Okay.
But the larger campuses will have the independent living component, but not all of them have independent living.
Okay.
Almost every property you'll find in our Civitas portfolio has the assisted living and the memory care component.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
So someone could graduate from one level of living to the other without even leaving your company.
Absolutely.
They could remain there.
The whole concept behind our campus living is we would call it age in place.
Okay.
So we partner with outside agencies to offer things like home health care and hospice and some of those additional layers
very
of
good.
care that a person might need.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the idea is that someone moves into independent living, and then as they age and as they need more care, then of course they can move over to the assisted living. The buildings are going to look and feel very similar.
Right.
When you move from, just think of that larger apartment independent living, now you're just going to kind of downsize. The apartments are still going to feel the same, look the same, have the same finishings, but in a smaller space. And so, yes, a person can, as they need more care, they can move to different apartments.
Well, that's very good, because that's a hard thing for a senior too, is to move them and from a different environment. And if they can do that within a familiar location or familiar place and company, that's even better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We really build a relationship with not only the resident, but with the family.
The families.
So then you have that trust factor. So it's easier to move from independent living to assisted living, or from assisted living to memory care, when you know that you have that same care team and you have that same leadership on that campus. And so, that's super important, is that relationship we build.
Very good. Very good. Well, how did you get started in this field? I mean, do you have a special story that attracted you to senior living?
Well, I've always been interested in working with seniors.
Okay.
And so you said earlier, I am a licensed master social worker. And so right out of college, I started in hospice. And so I was a hospice social worker.
Okay.
And I've always been very interested in dementia.
Yes.
And the progression of it. And so my background is all clinical. I've done hospice. I worked in an acute care setting, so in a large hospital setting.
Wow.
And then I worked for the University of North Texas Health Science Center and their Center for Geriatrics.
Okay.
And I learned so much there. Worked along some of the best Alzheimer's researchers, some amazing geriatricians, and just really learned a ton. And so my background is mostly social work. I then stayed home for a few years with my daughter, and I kind of fell into senior living, and I absolutely love it. And so using my clinical background, it's helped me be able to build relationships in the community, because I really understand the backside of it, the social work piece, the clinical piece. And so being able to go in and have conversations with other clinicians about senior living and the things that we have to offer, because I'm sure you know this, Wendy, but senior living today looks so much different than it did 10, 20, 30 years ago.
It sure does.
It does. And a lot of times there's a misconception of what it truly is.
That's true.
And so I have found my niche in providing that education and helping families understand that there are options that are not a traditional nursing home setting.
Yes.
And so I think that's where I have found my love for senior living. And I've been with Civitas almost 3 years. And I just really love working with other professionals and educating them on what senior living looks like, and then also working with families and helping them understand what senior living truly looks like.
Yes.
And taking away some of those myths.
And that makes them feel more comfortable. And I love getting the backstory from people who work in the senior sector, because it's, I find, more often than not, it's a calling. It's just something that you feel in your heart that you want to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that makes all the difference in the world in the services that are provided and the care that our family members get.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it is hard to find people who really truly love this industry.
Yes.
But they're out there.
Yes.
There's a lot of great people out there. We are very fortunate at Civitas. We have some really great leaders.
Yes.
And we have a lot of really great training programs. And so it's been really fun to watch that develop and see how, we're really encouraging our care staff and our nursing staff and everybody from food and beverage to housekeeping. It really takes the whole team.
It does.
To
really
make it
does.
work. And
Yes.
so, educating our own staff and working on training and making sure that people truly understand our seniors
Yes.
and their stories.
Right.
It's so often I think their stories are forgotten.
That's
I can
so true.
sit all day long and listen to, stories from our seniors because they just have really cool stories. And so I think sometimes in any industry, it's about getting there, getting the work done, going home.
Right.
And in our industry, it's about learning who our residents are.
Right.
How do you connect with them? What is their story? Because that is what makes it a home.
It really does. It really does. And you're right. There's so many interesting stories and so much for us to learn, because they offer just a ton of wisdom and experience.
100%.
And yes,
Yes.
I've learned so much from seniors and working in the sector, from clients and just hearing their stories. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, Miss Whiteman, I know you don't have time to hear all this." I'm like, I want to hear it, because
Absolutely.
it tells me who you are, what's important to you, and what you value. And I think we can service them better if we know what's important to them and know about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the most important pieces of what we do.
Yes.
We can put all these things in place, but if we don't know who our residents are and what they want,
yes,
then we might be putting things in place that are not impactful.
That's so true. Now that is so true. So if we're painting a picture, because we're creative caregiving here, if we're painting a picture for our audience, a family member who has someone that may have to go into a facility, what does that process look like if they're in a hospital or something? So how would they know to even contact your facility? What would happen next for them?
So if a person is in a hospital setting, or maybe they're at home,
or at home, yeah,
anywhere they're
true.
at, and you're realizing that there is a potential they could need assistance. So what I like to talk to a family about is, if you have a loved one that's in their home and you're starting to see that they're falling often, or maybe they're starting to call 911 for assistance more often.
Right.
And it might be minor things, it could be big things, but you're just seeing that they're changing. Right?
Yes.
Something's changing.
Yes.
Because often people do wait until they're in the hospital.
Okay.
And once they're in the hospital, you're usually in kind of a crisis mode, and you're trying to find something quickly, which is fine. We can work with those as well. But what happens is, if since we have so many properties, and so we have 17 properties in Dallas-Fort Worth, if a person's in a hospital and you're like, okay, they cannot return home, assisted living is what's going to be needed, or memory care, they would call one of our communities directly, whichever one is in the vicinity they would like to live in because of location wise. Or they can always call me directly, because I can talk to them about any property in our portfolio.
Okay.
But we would start with some discovery. What's important to the family?
Okay.
Is it location? Because sometimes it is, or is it amenities? Or, talk through kind of what's important, what kind of care that person is going to need.
Okay.
Price point is a big deal to families.
Oh, that's true.
So all of our buildings are, at a little different price point depending on where they're at. And so that first conversation is really about what are the needs?
What are the needs?
And then helping make sure that we get them connected to the right community, which one's the right fit. And then from there, it's going to be a matter of touring. You have to see it, you have to feel it, make sure it's going to be the right fit.
Yes.
And then from that point, if it is the right fit, we would move forward with doing an assessment. We're always going to go out and do an assessment on any new resident, make sure that we can provide the care.
Okay.
And then from there, it would be a matter of, putting down a deposit and signing a lease and all of those things, and then moving in the resident. All of that can happen pretty quickly. There's also a misconception that, assisted living or memory care, it's going to be a 1 to 2 week process. That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
We can move someone in same day if we need to.
Really?
If we're talking about somebody who's sitting at an acute care hospital and they need to be discharged, we can make it happen quickly.
Wow.
If you have a little bit more time, it's usually a little less stressful for the family.
Right.
But you don't always have that time. So we can make it happen quickly, or it can happen a little slower depending on the family and their needs.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the process, from touring to making a decision to an assessment to move in. Mm-hmm.
Well, very good. Very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know during COVID, that kind of changed the game for everybody. And you talked about a little bit about technology and how that helped for families to be able to stay in contact. So what is it looking like now? Are your facilities open now, or what's going on? Fully open?
So internally, meaning inside of our buildings, everything is operating now almost like it did pre-COVID.
Okay.
So we live in this pre-COVID, post-COVID world now.
Yes.
And we're still kind of somewhere in the middle. We're not kind of quite there.
Right.
But in our communities, you're going to see that almost all of our residents have been vaccinated.
Okay.
Okay. So in the communities, activities have resumed. Communal dining, the dining rooms are completely back open. Families are welcomed back in.
Okay.
We're really running almost pre-COVID. Now, we do still have some safety checks in place. Like everyone who comes in our front doors are still getting screened.
Okay.
That is very important. We are still following all of the CDC guidelines and guidance from the HHC.
Okay.
So we are still following all of those guidelines, but it is much closer to back to normal than it was.
Oh, very good.
Even 6 months ago.
Oh, good.
The one thing we're still not able to do completely is have large gatherings, large events inside.
Yeah.
And so
that's understandable.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Don't want large groups of people inside, congregating. But otherwise, everything is back open and running pretty normal again.
Very good.
Our new normal.
New normal. That's right. The new normal.
Yes.
Well, Nikki, do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to leave with our audience, or tips, or anything that's on your heart?
I would say that senior living in general is, and I mentioned this a second ago, there's a lot of misconceptions.
Yes.
And it's real important for families to do their research early.
Okay.
Try not to wait until a family's in crisis. Try not to wait until mom has fallen and broken her hip and is now in the hospital.
Right, right.
There are a lot of options, and there are some really great options.
Yes.
So shows like this and, the web, and there's just a lot of information out there.
Yes.
But start that process early. If you feel like, there's a chance it's going to happen eventually, be ready so that when something does happen and you are in the hospital and they say to you, you're going to need to go to an assisted living,
yes,
you know where you want to go.
Right.
It's much less stressful. The other thing I would say is start early too on your financially planning for the future.
Yes.
There's things like long-term care insurance, and there's some different things out there
yes,
that I don't think our generation is aware of,
right,
where we can be preparing for our future as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's very good, because in my book, the first chapter is having that conversation with mom and dad, or just mom and dad having the conversation themselves. And you can't plan too early, because it's very difficult making a big decision when you're stressed and you have a compressed amount of time to make that decision.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to make that because it's so emotional.
It is.
It's so emotional. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And even for folks, my age, it's important to start that
Yes.
future planning, because there's things we can do now to set ourselves up for the future as well.
That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
So if a family member wanted to get in contact with you guys, how would they do that? And we can make sure we put up your website as well.
Yes. So on our website, of course, all of our different locations are going to be on the website.
Okay.
Phone numbers directly to those locations.
Okay.
If anybody watches this show and wants to talk to me directly, I can also, Wendy, share with you my direct contact,
Okay.
so that I can, I'd be willing to talk to any family who had questions.
Perfect.
But yes, our website's going to be the best place, because from there you can pretty much get in contact with any of our communities. You can learn about who we are. And that's probably kind of a one-stop shop for anybody who needs information.
Yes, yes. Well, Nikki, this has been great. And our audience, I'm sure they're going to appreciate this, because you've painted a great picture of the process, because a lot of people have no idea. And if they're starting early, you can, gather this information and go on the website, like Nikki said, and get information about the different communities. I really loved the way your website was put together, by the way.
Oh.
And the videos, especially, that educated everyone about the COVID protocols, and your leadership were on the videos. They didn't just have someone do a video. I really found that wonderful that your company, your CEO was on there, and different leadership positions were actually on the videos too.
Absolutely.
So that was great.
So during COVID, we kind of have to put our hats off to Misty Miller. She's our Chief Operating Officer.
Okay.
She's a master's level nurse, and her background is mostly skilled nursing, and she's been with Civitas for over 3 years. But she kind of led the charge during the COVID crisis,
Very
we'll call it
good.
COVID pandemic. But all of our senior leadership is very involved. All of them are still very involved in the daily operations of our company.
Yes.
So it's not a hands-off company. Our owners and our senior leadership are involved.
They're
As
involved.
much as I'll tell you a fun story is, that winter storm that we had that everyone's still talking about in Texas.
Yes.
Everybody was pitched in, everybody jumped in to help, but our owners and our senior leadership was out in that snowstorm,
Wow.
taking supplies to buildings, making sure we had generators, doing all the things necessary. So we are very fortunate to have a very strong leadership team and to have a great executive team.
Well, that makes a great team. That makes a great team for sure.
Yeah.
Well, our
Lead
hat is
by
off to-
example.
Yes. And they've done that.
They've
really
absolutely
done
have.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming on our show, and thank you for educating the community out there about elder care and the elder care space. And don't forget, if you do contact Nikki, make sure you tell her that Wendy sent you. And don't forget to like us on social media and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to check on a senior and just make sure they're okay, because it just might brighten your day. Thanks for watching.